You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as we always do, we put Ghana very top on the agenda. And my guests in the studio doing the discussion and also via Zoom, Mary Ada of the Transparency International Ghana, Suleiman Ibrahima of the Media Foundation for West Africa, the Fourth Estate, the Data Journalism, Investigative Journalism Hub, Dr. Justice Yankson, lawyer and former General Secretary of the GMA, Andrew Ejapamesa, lawyer, former Member of Parliament for Sekandi, and Sharif Mahmoud Khalid. The thing he's stopping me from doing, I disagree. Okay, so Dr. Sharif Mahmoud Khalid is economic advisor to the Vice President. So as you may be aware, there was issue of non-compliance in respect of the broadcasting regulations, and some stations suffered a suspension of their frequencies, even though it was very brief, for violation of regulations in a recent audit conducted by the NCA, that is the National Communications Authority. So over 60 of them became casualties, including Asasi Radio and Wuntumi. Of course, these are the entities that bring the issue to the fore. And before anybody could say Jack, we were told that President Mahama had directed an amnesty for some 30 days for all of these stations. So because of that, they are back on the airwaves, hoping that they will rectify the non-compliances within that period. Issues have been coming up. Suleiman Ibrahima, you in 2017 led this, vehement opposition to the shutdown of, at the time, over 100 stations. Why are you singing a different story today? Are you really?
Right. So you're right. In 2017, 2019, we had a very tough battle with the NCA in the government at the time. And we went all the way to the courts because the NCA had refused to release certain data to us after we clearly exposed what was obviously a politically motivated activity that was undertaken. And that was on the basis of analysis that we had done that showed clearly that a number of radio stations that were allowed to remain on air had actually committed the same infractions for which the other dozens had been shut down. So at that time, we were very clear that we are not opposed to regulatory compliance or enforcement of the law. But if you are enforcing the law, then you must enforce it in a fair and justified way. But we had situations where certain radio stations that had defaulted once in terms of renewal had been shut down. And we saw others that had defaulted for more than 3 times or 4 times allowed to be on air. And these were stations that we knew were obviously owned by persons who were politically affiliated. I don't want to mention names, but if that will make it maybe clearer. For example, Radio XYZ was shut down, and they had gotten their frequency in 2011. They ought to have renewed in 2016. So they didn't renew, and they had been shut down. Oman FM got their frequency in 2006. And they had not renewed all that while, and yet were not shut down. We can look at a number of other stations. So our problem was the fact that it was done in a very partisan way. And we said, look, what has happened is actually a way to mute the voices of the opposition party at the time. And so we were very clear, enforce the law, but be very, very transparent and fair with it. So in February this year, if you recall, the new government shut down some 6 radio stations. And we issued a statement, and then this is the headline we gave: shutdown of radio stations in Ghana. New government is treading an old dangerous path. And here we issued a caution that we hope this is not the same thing that the previous government had done that this government is doing. And I remember having a conversation with the minister, Honorable Sam George, and saying, look, what I want to know, who are the owners of these stations and all of that. So when this particular one happened, again, we had that conversation. And I looked at the data and analyzed it all. And I realized, okay, if a radio station owned by Dr. Dufo has been shut down, Akwini FM owned by Delasoa, Honorable Delasoa, former MP for Kwando, has been shut down, and Nyansapor Radio in Shama, owned by the current fisheries minister, Emilia Atta, has been shut down for the same offenses that Asase and Wuntumi and the others have also been shut down, then of course, it's a fair way of going about it, and it's a transparent way of going about it, and the partisanship that we had seen in the previous exercise isn't there. And therefore, we cannot say, for the sake of media freedom and so on, let radio stations do whatever they want. Look, in the case of Wuntumi, for example, I've looked at previous communications that
very quick, so that Ejapa will come.
2022, there was a letter to them saying, look, you are in breach of the regulatory guidelines. And one of them was that your transmitter is in Kokomlemle, and by law, you are supposed to move it out to a place called Ajengote or Ajengote or something. And they indicated in the letter that because your transmitter is in Kokomlemle, it is interfering with other frequencies within the same area, and the rule is that you must move it out. 2022, it happened, they didn't move. 2023, they were reminded, they didn't move. And so, how do you say, oh, because it is owned by Wuntumi, even though they are doing all this, allow
earlier when it happened in 2017 and President Akufo-Addo was asked to intervene, he said he won't intervene. People should follow the law. President Mahama has intervened. Is this right? Does he have power under the law to do what he has done in the name of clemency?
Well, powers under the law, I'm not sure. I think that I asked a friend, for example, how can the minister do suspensions and within hours, the president orders the minister to suspend the suspensions? A series of suspensions happening within, and is it that, and I listened to the minister on Joy when he said, well, the president had been consulted prior to the decision that was made. And so I asked myself, was it just a PR gimmick, that was being...
Thank you. Hold on for me. Yes, Ejapa.
I guess that he's answered the issue by his closing comments. Pure PR, nothing else.
That's a question he asked.
Oh, no, but of course, it goes without saying. Because knowing how our governance system works, I'm not so sure the minister, especially with respect to the sensitivity of radio station ownership and what had transpired in the past, would take this step without recourse to the presidency. And like you said, he himself confirmed that the president had been engaged. So is it a case that they sat together and said that, well, go ahead and do it, and then after that, consistent with the narrative that I want to paint about my...
Is that not the bigger problem with our democracy? That we have laws, institutions have been empowered to take actions, and yet they have to defer to the president, who doesn't even have a power on that issue.
I'll come there. But, to confirm that indeed, this is nothing but to throw dust in the eyes of the public. That, Mr. Mahama, the president, is, some tolerant president. He is in favor of press freedom, and that even though the minister has exercised some power under the law, or the NCA has done so, he, in his nature, like the statement that my good friend and brother Felix released, sought to suggest, has asked them to it's all theatrics and no more. Okay. Oh yeah, exactly.
But some say this is better than Akufo-Addo saying go to hell.
So then again, you go back to the law. Was President Akufo-Addo right in insisting that the right things be done?
I believe so.
And it is not the case that only NDC people stations were impacted in 2017. Because at the time I was a member of the communications committee. Joe Osei-Wusu, the first deputy speaker station, was closed down in 2017. Okay, I'm not so sure this time around. Nyansapo, I thought it was for Ato late Ato.
Okay.
Oh, the former.
So
he's the one that I thought.
I've guessed about.
But assuming that it was even owned by the current fisheries minister, I would be surprised with what we know now.
I have just a minute
that
left.
This is all a charade.
I've just a minute left. Let me give that to
impression
Mary.
About the government.
Let me give that to Mary. Mary is still with us. Mary, what do you say about these things, about discriminatory approach to the application of the law?
So, Samson, I would say that if there are issues of inconsistencies in the application of the law in the past, and there have also been political bias in it, and today we are seeing for a fact, as Sule has indicated, and I looked into it as well, that we need to move from the political issues around victimization, which we advocate against, to some level of sanity in the process. And I believe that in all of this, we are going forward as a people, knowing that some of these things cannot be accepted. We cannot switch over whenever there is a transition to do some of the things we are doing. Is it only during transitions that people do not comply? If there are non-compliance issues, people should be sanctioned.
Okay, the president should stay off and allow the institutions to do their work.
And again, I say that even though the president is doing a very good job at all of this, in this case, I believe that he should have allowed the law to work.
Thank you very much. So our time is up. Mary Ada, Samuel Akolgo, Suleiman Ibrahima, Justice Yangsin, Ejapa Mesa, and Sharif Mahmoud Khalid. I'm Samson Ladia. Have a good afternoon. This has been Newsfile.